And up over here.
Call the Siloam Springs Board of Directors pre-agenda board meeting to order. Roll call.
Hunt.
Here.
Wiles.
Here.
Blair.
Here.
Rissler. Carroll.
Here.
Smiley.
Here.
Allen.
Thank you, and as you all will notice, we have a new face sitting beside me this evening. I'd like to introduce you to our new Deputy City Clerk, Janae Fain. Please make sure and welcome her, and don't give her a hard time for a few days, and then, you know.
Madam
So-
Mayor, would you say her name one more time?
Janae.
Janae.
Fain. Uh-huh. Okay, so with that, Alan, we will turn it over to you.
Hey, thank you, Mayor. Good to see everyone. Starting out, our agenda is public input, and then we're going to move to consent. The first item on consent is A, regular meeting minutes. B, resolution 18-24, final plat development permit, Hillcrest subdivision, Phase 1, 200 block of Airport Road. Staff, if you just want to give them a quick overview of that.
You, Megan.
This is the Hillcrest subdivision. They have made changes to the plat since the previous preliminary plat approval. The changes are related to the phasing. So they changed the phasing due to sewer availability at the time of construction. So they had to take in some of the southern lots because that's when the sewer would be available for those, and then leave out some of the northern east lots from the proposal. So they've changed the phasing a little bit, and then they've also changed some of the lot sizes. So it's that tract A there that you see on the plat. When we present it. But so tract A, they've changed that. The reason for that is they've had to increase the size of it, and it will not be buildable until phase 2 of the development due to them having to dedicate the street along Buffalo Gap there. So when they dedicated that street, that's why they had to include tract A on this request. But other than that, it won't be buildable until phase 2. But those are the only changes. Everything else is identical to what was previously approved on the preliminary plat. Staff is available for any questions that you'll have.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Mindy.
I thought I saw that they were also adding 5 houses to that phase.
So that's the southern houses that I just talked about. They had to add in those southern houses, and then they removed some of the northeast houses for the phasing.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, and that was just due to sewer availability at the
that.
time of construction, so that's the reasoning for
So
the
the
phase changes.
total number of houses will still be, I think, at the 99 for
Yeah,
both phases?
with
Okay.
the 2 phases. So the total number is still the same, it's just they had to change the amount that's going in. And then they had to change that tract A, just due to them having to dedicate along Buffalo Gap there. They had to include that on this phase 1 request, but they actually won't be able to build on that for, till phase 2.
Got distracted. Thank you for repeating yourself.
Excellent. Any other questions? Moving on to C, Resolution 19-24, Special Use Development Permit, Short-Term Rental, 523 South Oak Hill Street. Staff?
Megan Thomas, Planner 1 again. This is just a typical short-term rental for 523 South Oak Hill Street. Staff hasn't noticed anything, any issues. We haven't received any citizen comments on this project, and staff is available for any questions that y'all have.
Thank you, Megan. Any questions? Moving on to D, Airport Taxiway Pavement Rehabilitation, ADA Grant Application, $89,000. When I get in that fig.
James Harris, Community Services Manager. This is a ADA grant, or Arkansas Department of Aeronautics grant to, let me back up just a second. We're starting in May 6th, we are going to do a taxi or a runway rehab project. At this time, we started looking at it and looking at our taxiway. It needed some work done to it also, so we are going to be shut down for 30 days during that time. We thought this would be the best time to be able to do a rehab of our taxiway at the same time to mitigate any more closures that we'd have to have at the airport at that time. So we are trying to go forward with a grant with the ADA to be able to fund this. It's for $289,000. We're hoping that might be a little bit cheaper once we get into contract with the company that's going to be there. They haven't given us a total, but this is our engineer's estimate for it. The ADA will pay for 200,000 of it. We will have to pay $89,000 of it. The funds for that will be from the project from the runway project, we are able to do, it's a $3.2 million project. It ended up only going to cost the city $44,000. We had budgeted $290,000 for that project. So still with this, with $89,000, it'll be a savings of $150,000 for the city for a $3.6 million project whenever it completely goes through. So, but it will be, by doing this, the taxiway hasn't been looked at since 2010. And this will allow us to not have to do anything from our apron over for the next 6 to 10 years with concrete or asphalt-related issues. So it'll just make everything better out there and make it where we won't have to have any more closures. And with that, I'm available for any questions.
Is this all the grants that are available for this project?
Yes, yeah. This, and it does top out at $200,000. It is a 90-10 grant, but it tops out at $200,000. So that's why we have to pay the other $89,000.
How will the 30 days of construction impact the current airport users?
I have already sent out letters to everybody and emails and everything. Everybody has been notified that they will have to move aircraft for that 30 days, and then we'll be able to,
Resume normal?
and then hopefully, this may bump it out to like 35 to 40 days with adding this onto it. Because what we will be doing after that, we'll be doing a change order to the Emery Sapin Sum that is doing the mill and overlay of the runway to add this into it. So currently, the contract is for 30 days. We think by adding this, that they're gonna ask for a couple more days because we've added a little bit more. But we're still hoping to have it done, but like I said, if we do all of this, then at the same time, that will eliminate any future closures that we have to have.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Thank you, James.
Thank you, James. Letter E, approve survey and sale of new cremation burial spaces at Oak Hill Cemetery. Travis?
Good afternoon, Travis Cheney, Parks and Recreation Manager. City Code gives the board the authority to approve the survey and sale of new plots within the existing cemetery boundaries. We're at a place now where we need to open up some more dedicated cremation spots. So these are small 2-foot by 3-foot plots just for cremation burials. And so we have, if you've seen an exhibit here, we have proposed 288 dedicated cremation spaces. And so we would be asking the board to approve us to go ahead and lay those out and begin selling cremation spaces. And staff is available for any questions you might have.
And where will these be?
So they'll be on the western side of the cemetery. If you can kind of picture the cemetery from the air, there's the westernmost road that runs north-south. These will be just to the west of that westernmost road, up against the road, sort of south of the current cemetery shop and office. And you may see on that exhibit, there are, hopefully plans for future roads and potentially more full burial spaces. Staff estimates we've got a good 10 years before we need any more full burial spaces, any more road construction, anything like that. This is just to meet a more immediate need of a growing interest in cremation. And so this will be just for dedicated cremation spaces. And we estimate this should get us at least another 10 years, if not more.
And how many spaces for cremation?
288 is what we're requesting.
Thank you, Travis.
Yes, sir.
And then the last is the budget amendment, Police Department capital budget, Police K-9 for $15,500. And again, that's my error. You may see in the discussion it also is K-9. I have it on there twice. This will be the discussion. Chief. Oh, Captain Spicer.
Derek Spicer, Captain Salem Springs Police Department.
Derek, if you would pull your mic down, please.
Sorry, I'm short. I'm
Thank
short.
you.
So what we are requesting is a budget amendment for a one-time purchase of a police canine. Simmons Food, the family at Simmons Foods has once again offered to purchase the police canine. So they will purchase the police canine, and then the budget amendment will then, from the city, $15,500 will be to purchase the police canine. So that's what the budget amendment is for, and staff is available for any questions you might have.
Anyone? Looks like we're good.
All right.
Thank you. Good job.
Thank you all. Have a blessed day.
I do have,
Oh.
is the canine already trained when we get it?
No, ma'am. What will happen is, once they receive the check, then they will search for the canine. Normally, they come from Austria. So they will search and find the canine that's most suitable for us, bring the canine over, train the canine for approximately a month and a half to 2 months, then bond with the handler, and then once that 4-week training is complete with the handler, then the dog will come to us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Captain. And moving on to ordinances, and again, directors, please keep in mind, sometimes we don't think of the questions during the pre-agenda. If you have something, feel free to email me and staff, and we'll be happy to answer questions if you think of one on anything on the agenda. Moving on to ordinances. G, ordinance 24-03, second reading, vacation of alleyway, 809 East University Street.
Kevin Moore, city engineer. This is the second reading for the vacate at 809 University Street. Staff has received the updated survey and the original petition closing the full length of the alley and have changed our recommendation to a recommendation to consider the alley vacate. And staff is available for any questions you may have.
Directors, questions, comments about the alleyway? Mindy?
I haven't had a chance to read this in full, so Jay, do you mind just sort of summarizing this for us?
I'm happy to. Thank you, Board, for giving me an opportunity to address this fun issue. So I wanted to just put together a little brief correspondence so you would have something in your hands to help you understand why I stumble over your easy questions as you say, well, can we do this or not do it? It seems like it should be so easy as the pertinent statute simply basically allows the vacation by right on board approval upon execution of the petition by the abutting landowners. And then we have this interesting question of who is an abutting landowner? Who is that? And the Arkansas courts have clouded the answer to that question by saying, well, we're going to consider an abutting landowner to be anyone who might be adversely affected by the proposed closing of a street or alley. So instead of having an easy black and white rule, the court is causing, in this case, the board to make a factual determination. We find where not everyone is signed, speaking of Simmons in this case, because they perhaps could be adversely impacted. The board makes a factual finding, should it choose to do so, that this particular abutting landowner is not adversely affected, therefore their signature is not required. And the next question is there a different result if we leave 6 inches or 6 feet on the north end of the alley? And the answer is no, same result. Either they're adversely impacted or they're not adversely impacted if they have not signed off on the petition. I think the final question is, what if we're wrong, or what if a landowner believes we are wrong? In that case, a landowner would have 30 days from the date the ordinance becomes effective to file suit in Benton County Circuit Court challenging our factual finding and saying, wait, you said I'm not adversely impacted, but I believe I am, so we're going to go to court and let the judge decide if I'm adversely impacted by the closing. So that's the risk to the city of making this finding is, well, someone could appeal. But it is only a short period of time that they would have that appeal opportunity. They can't come back 5 or 10 years from now and say, oh, the city shouldn't have done that. When it did it, I now believe I'm adversely impacted.
Thank you. That does help. And you all are not, at this point, recommending that we approve this. You're asking us to consider approving it, which is two different things.
That is correct. So we've received the updated version that meets our needs from an engineering standpoint, closing the full length of the alley. But with the legal considerations involved, we don't believe we can make the full recommendation to approve. But we have, of course, changed our recommendation to deny that we had provided last week.
Which does put the onus directly on the board to determine whether there's an adverse impact or not. Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
and Kevin, that your finding or decision is based upon best practices, is it not?
Correct. Yes.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Chris.
Chris Paxton, Community Development Director, if I can speak. Apologize. So when we looked at this again, we revisited the reason why we requested denial. So the reason we requested denial from our department, from a development standpoint, was the planning practice of leaving a 6-inch strip of right-of-way that was 20 foot that was not accessible from the public right-of-way. So that's why we backed off of the request to denial. However, that with that legal consideration, we did not feel confident in recommending approval.
Well, and that 6-inch alley, it doesn't make a difference now based on what you said,
That's
right?
correct.
Okay.
And that's what changed our recommendation. If that 6-inch alley was still a part of the discussion, then we would still be recommending denial.
Okay. And did we talk about whether there's been another instance like this that you all can find where we've not, other than the workaround that was presented to us by Mr. Caldwell, where we have not required a signature of an abutting property?
Not to our knowledge.
Anyone else? I believe we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Board, I'm going to have Jay my concern is we're setting a precedence going forward, so I'm just have Jay talk a little bit about that.
So, Madam Mayor and the board. I think the board has a good grasp of the questions now. So going forward, anytime we are presented with a petition to vacate a street or alley under these statutes, the planning staff and the board will have to consider, are there other nearby property owners who might be adversely affected who did not sign the petition? So long as everyone has signed the petition who might be affected by the closure, we just go full speed ahead. But we're certainly going to want to pause and take a hard look at a petition for closure in the future in the event there are nearby landowners who might be adversely affected by the closure. So I think that's the bottom line for the current state of Arkansas law on that question.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns? Staff is help you any way we can.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
in this case, though, it seems that it's somewhat unique because there's a house in the middle of the alleyway, which isn't typically going to be the case going forward. It just seems like this one, it'd be hard to set a precedence based off of one where there's a house in the middle of the alleyway and then the alley's in a flood zone.
And Chris, you may have to help me with this. I get that point, but I'm not sure it's really based on the house. It's more of the closure of the street. Kevin, you want to address a little bit?
I think the closure process, as defined when you petition to vacate, doesn't necessarily consider the presence of what is there. It considers whether it has been used by the public in the previous 5 years. Now, this one we believe has not, and so it's eligible to be vacated. But I don't know that we can point to the existence of a structure as what we hinge our decision on.
I agree with you, Director. It's definitely a unique situation. That's why we're looking at every angle we can. But again, I stand by staff that, we changed our stance to consideration. And you have a tough call to make. Any other questions? All right, thank you, Kevin. Moving on to H, ordinance 24-04, first reading amending section 102-21 of the City Municipal Code, rezoning from I-1 to R3, 809 East University Street.
Yes, thank you, Minister Gilbert and Mayor Nation. This is actually the same property that you're considering for the alleyway closure. They're doing a rezoning as well for the entire property, going from industrial to R3 to family. I would point out that there is existing R3 to the south, so the proposal is consistent with the existing neighborhood built environment and is also consistent with the recommendation of the future land use map. Our understanding is the applicant is desiring to build a new house on the non-floodplain portion of the lot, which is that very front portion. We did receive a call of a questioning nature after the staff report was published, and we've addressed that question. And we are recommending approval with no needed conditions. We're available for any questions. Thank you.
Questions, board? All right. Moving on to I, ordinance 24-05, Master Street Plan Amendment, right-of-way determination.
Kevin Moore, City Engineer. For your consideration next week, we are looking at updating the Master Street Plan to update the procedures for dedicating right-of-way. One of the things that came up in the town hall was the speed of processing certain types of applications, specifically minor subdivisions, so lot consolidations, lot splits, things like that. Those require right-of-way dedications in a lot of cases. And in our Master Street Plan, it currently says that any deviation from the width originally proposed in the Master Street Plan has to be recommended by the city engineer and then approved by the board. That didn't used to be an issue because those used to ultimately come to you all as a board anyway, but now those go to the Planning Commission in speeding up that process. So what we have for this update, we're not proposing any changes to any of our maps or design standards or any fees or anything like that. It's strictly that procedure. Everything that we're changing is in section 3.2, discussing the different street classifications. Then we've added an appeal process in section 3.3. To kind of go through those, overall, this determination used to be specifically listed as an option under collector streets. So we're striking that from the language in a couple locations and putting that above all the street classifications so that it can be done for major local, collector, arterial, all those. Again, a striking during that process, and we move that up above the collector standard itself. And so now whenever they come to us for a minor subdivision, they would, if they request to dedicate a differing amount of right-of-way, we would review that for the area. We'd review that against our Master Street Plan, against previous plats, what right-of-way we already have, what we feel our needs are. And then we would either agree and allow them to proceed with a lesser, typically a lesser width at their request, depending on if we feel that still meets the needs of the public interest. And what we are asking is that the city engineer would be able to approve within one street class, but if they wish for more than that, say to downgrade an arterial to a major local, they would have to come to the board as they do today. And then we've added a section for appeals. So if staff and the applicant don't agree on the right-of-way needs in an area, then they could appeal that to the board, and then the board's decision would be final. Staff's available for any questions you may have. This was forwarded with a recommendation of approval by the Planning Commission. The staff's available for any questions.
Questions? Thank you, Kevin. And our last one, J, ordinance
I
20.
think Mindy has a question.
Oop,
Of
I'm
course,
sorry.
I have a
Yeah.
question. Sorry. Did you say something about sometimes the request is to reduce street width?
Typically, yes. So you've had, I believe in December and again in January, you've had two requests come forward where we had a street listed as a collector, which requires typically a 70-foot right-of-way dedication, and they have requested a major local, which would be 60 feet instead of 70. And so currently, that process, if they wish to not have to dedicate additional right-of-way, would be they apply for the minor subdivision, and then that sits until it's been reviewed and approved by this board, and then they can continue through our process. So what
This would be for a new developer that's wanting to maybe reduce the size of streets.
Correct, yes. And this would speed up the process. So we would make that decision as staff, and then it would continue on through the minor subdivision process.
Despite where I might have been with the last two meetings, or when we discussed this, I'm all for making the process easier, but I just would caution it too many streets that are narrower than they are, just because we're just seeing so many issues with that.
Right, and to be clear, this is more applicable to the right-of-way that they're dedicating. It won't actually affect what they
yeah.
construct for
Okay.
a project.
Okay, thank you for that
Yes.
clarification. Okay, yeah.
Any other questions? Moving on to J, ordinance 24-06, first and only reading, waiving competitive bidding, Public Works Department, Street Division, Trimble Works Plus, 3-year subscription, SI Tech for $96,699.96. Dennis?
This is Kendi Street Department Superintendent. This ordinance is asking to waive the bidding for purchasing the Trimble Plus from SciTech. With this GPS, there's currently the electric department, the water, wastewater service department, and then, of course, our engineering department all use Trimble. So no one else in the city has a different system. And with this being the case, the street department would like to stick with Trimble because it would be compatible with everyone else's within the city. And then it would also allow us to work hand in hand with Mike, our surveyor. Anything that he does on the job site with his surveying equipment, then we can come back and we can re-identify that, we can relocate that. We don't have to keep asking him to come back to the job site. And then also, this kind of puts us into what we would say the 21st century on job site work, because we were wanting to add this to one machine at this time, possibly doing more machines later. But by putting this grading system on a machine, it will actually cut the project to grade. You have a computer screen inside the machine, and you can watch all that's going on, and you can cut to grade, and then when you start filling back, you can fill back to grade. Whatever the proposed grade is, you can put that back with that machine. And basically, this machine does it automatically. So kind of helps the operator not have to be as precise. You know, older operators don't seem to have as much issue as newer operators do. So this would help aid in all of our project work to get us undercut and back to grade, and would expedite the projects and just make things a lot easier. And also Mike could help us with creating our files to put into the machine's computer, and so that we can have all that done in-house too. So with that, staff is available for any questions.
Thank you, Dennis. Anyone? Thank you very much.
Before we move on to the presentation, I just want to discuss an email from a citizen that you all received on February 15th. And it's to a restaurant / selling alcohol within 200 feet of a school or church. The historic, I know downtown, I've had board members talk with me, and downtown was exempt because being a historic district. So we have had meeting after meeting, it seems like, trying to find solutions and trying to find ways. Chris or Ben, kind of give an update, kind of what we talked about yesterday. You may see an ordinance come in front of you, and this is not voting, this is discussion, but I thought it'd be a good time to talk about it with Jay being present. One of the issues that I had, I started putting my police hat on, was when you're selling alcohol, you know, state says 1,000 feet. This is more of a permitting. So I wanted to make sure we were good with legal, and this stuff kind of things take time when we're dealing, especially with churches, because, you know, living here for, you know, going on 5 years now, it's just, I didn't realize, I knew at one time we had more churches per capita anywhere in the country. And just, I was just looking the other day, we still have 69 churches. That's important that we continue, you know, our ordinances and do what's best for our citizens. So again, this has been a big topic of our discussion. So Ben or Chris?
All right, I'll start and then Chris will finish. How's that? So just to give some context, when we became a wet county, this was some time ago, I think more than 10 years ago now, the alcohol code, chapter 6, was developed because we needed to regulate alcohol in Siloam Springs, whereas before we didn't really have to do that. So the city board at that time wanted special provisions to buffer around churches and schools for any alcohol related activity. Didn't have to be a liquor store, it could just be a restaurant or any dispensing or selling or storing or wholesale retail of alcohol. They didn't want it to be closer than 200 feet measured from wall to wall from a church building to that establishment. So that's been on the books for a while, and I think there is an exception for native or Arkansas wines that's how I believe one restaurant on 412 is able to do wine. I think it's Angelino's, if I remember correctly, because they're right next to a church. But other than that, I don't believe, you know, you can just have regular alcohol sales, that type of thing. So we are potentially looking at an option to solve this issue that the director or administrator has told us about, to allow a waiver given by the institution that's being impacted. So that would be if there was a church, if there was a permission from that institute. Chris, did you want to add more?
So when we talk about ordinance, different chapters of ordinance each have defined different variants or waiver procedures. In this case, this section of code that defines this 200 feet does not also define a method to overcome that. It doesn't define that for example, that staff can process a waiver request to the board. There's no route forward. when you have defined code, it's typical to have an appeal route, a waiver route, or a variance route defined within that code. In this case, we had an individual that had requested the permit. The permit was denied based off of about a 20-foot difference, and it was about 180 feet away from the church. The church also provided a letter that stated that they were not against the location having the permit. However, just because the neighbors are okay with it does not overcome the code requirement itself. Staff's opinion is kind of a moot point on that because there's not a route forward for the applicant of that permit to go forward through staff to get a variance or a waiver. We had discussed other routes, which the board is ultimately responsible for its own ordinance. So what would be the cleanest way? Would it be a legislative type variance where it would be a standalone ordinance just allowing the single location and we handle each of those individually? Or should we bring forward an ordinance that would allow some sort of a variance process under the guidance of the city administrator or the director or some way forward in these instances when we have support by the applicant and the adjacent entity that's within that 200 feet, be it a church in this case. So I think right now what we're looking at is potentially drafting an ordinance revision to bring it forward to the board that in these cases where the church is within that 200 feet and has provided support for the business to receive the permit, whether or not the city administrator can make that call or an entity within the city.
And I really appreciate staff because we've been working on this. This is actually Ben's idea. I'll give him credit for it because we were kidding. We were going to call it the Ben rule. But again, with the growth of the city, and and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, and with this property, when the abandonment, when they're not there for 6 months and then they come back and a church had opened up at that time, it falls under that ordinance and there's not a lot that we can do. So again, this ordinance could give some type of discretion if the church would allow that instead of just saying this is what we're going to do next to our churches or our schools. So again, that's where we're at. So hopefully we will bring in an ordinance to you. We have to run it in the paper for 15 days and something to you to discuss, probably another pre-agenda, or we'll bring it directly to a board meeting. Well, we'll have a pre-agenda before the next board meeting, so you'll see it again.
I do have a question about that. So this would only be for churches, not schools? So if there's a school within 200 feet, it doesn't matter whether they give approval or not, this is only churches?
It'd be only for churches. Correct, Chris? Because the ordinance, that's what I was talking to before, to make sure that we don't change something that would allow someone to petition or exempt, but because the ordinance does include churches and schools. This would be for churches.
And then so if you've got one church within 200 feet that says it's okay, and another church within 200 feet says it's not okay, that's just it.
It would essentially be a signature for that church. It's not dissimilar to the petition signature where you're ensuring that you're not having that adverse impact on that church. They're agreeing that they don't have an issue with the sale of the alcohol at that restaurant location or whatever it may be.
I guess it would just have to be real obvious that just because one church said it was okay, it wasn't setting a precedent or pressure on another church to say it was okay in a different situation.
That's correct. And for the variance, you would define that, and legal may correct me on this if they choose to. You would define that in the ordinance as a requirement for the application submittal. You would have to apply for that waiver from, for example, the city administrator, if that is the will of the board, for them to apply for the application for that waiver. They would have to also have a supporting document from the signature authority at that church.
And is that something that can be done before a restaurant owner commits to opening a restaurant? If that is sort of, I'm not going to do it if they don't allow this?
That's correct. In this case, I think that's the exact scenario that we have now is the owner of the location wants to verify and ensure that the tenant at this location would be able to sell those
Before they
wines
commit.
and stuff with the
And that's why we were
restaurant.
hearing from the owner of the property, right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
But we've gone around and we've had lots of discussion. You know, again, I think this is about the only possibility that we have found, to at least it be a case-by-case basis up to the churches. Because, again, you have these smaller churches that pop up, and someone owns property, and then they come in and they want to make it into a restaurant. The way the ordinance is, they wouldn't be able to.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Betsy.
So a new church pops up and there's already the sale of alcohol or restaurant there. I assume
So
the church won't have a say in that case if it's already there.
I apologize if I interrupted you.
Oh, that's fine.
I can respond to that. So anytime you have whenever you come into compliance with an ordinance, if something takes you out of compliance with that ordinance, you become what's called a legal nonconformance. And when you have a legal nonconformance in the city of Siloam Springs, until that business is vacated, for example, if this restaurant shuts down and another restaurant opens, if there's a lapse of 6 months, then that legal nonconformance would have to be settled before a new restaurant could open. If a new restaurant opened within that 6-month period, then they would still fall under that category of a legal nonconformance, so they would still be eligible to fall under that same category. If the new church opened while the restaurant was in operation, then that restaurant would still be eligible to have those alcohol sales while they're in that legal nonconformance status.
I would point out in the code specifically, it says no new permit shall be granted, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if they had a permit already and then the church came up, their permit isn't suddenly becoming valid at that point. They still have the permit.
Okay.
So if the permit lapsed or, they went away for 6 months and then someone else tried to come in and needed a new permit, then they would have to get permission from the new church as it appears. So it's all at the permitting issuance stage when you look at the church situation.
I have a question then. If the building remains vacant for 6 months, then the permit goes away and they have to reapply?
I would think so. If it would eventually be nulled out because it's not in operation.
So it couldn't be leased or sold with the idea that you could have alcohol? They'd have to reapply.
I believe so. I mean, I would have to go back again. It just says here, no new permit shall be granted. It doesn't specify how the permitting expires or such. I would have to do more research on that because this is the alcohol code. It's not planning and zoning. It's a little bit different.
And I also think that would be determined by who was holding the permit. I'm not sure specifically if the owner of the structure, for example, we have a lot of strip malls, and if the strip mall owner has that permit, does it go with his businesses or does it go to the restaurant?
That's the code right there.
And I apologize, I'm doing some of this on the fly. So,
I got to brag on these guys because they're doing this off the cuff. I kind of threw this on them about 10 minutes ago. So.
and there are going to be some challenges whenever we discuss who was issued the permit, and I think that's something that we can definitely look at when we write this waiver request to verify. This waiver request ordinance, so we can verify who holds that permit and what happens if that business closes. Does that waiver? We can make it, for example, that it sunsets with the individual business. You can make it where it follows the permit itself. The waiver is not mutually exclusive, would not be mutually exclusive to the permit request itself, but a lot of our current ordinance is written around this permit requirement. So generally speaking, though, the legal nonconformance would not expire until 6 months of a separate use or a non-use.
Betsy, I think you had something else.
Thank you. That was actually to some extent the next part. So let's say it's Church 1 and Business A comes in. The church says, sure, maybe it's Chili's. Yeah, we like Chili's. They can serve alcohol. Chili's closes. The next restaurant comes in, small town. I don't like the owner of that restaurant, so I'm not going to give a variance. I don't think that's okay, because basically also, in 2016, the board decided downtown could have alcohol no matter how close they were to the church, and it didn't matter how the church felt about it. But the rest of the town can't do that.
Right.
So I think that needs to be taken consideration with a new code, that one restaurant can be there and the church is okay with it, but a next restaurant comes in and like, I don't like that restaurant, or I don't like those people, or that just doesn't seem right. A lot of this doesn't seem right.
I totally agree, and I think that that's definitely something we can look at whenever we're drafting the new
Thank-
code that we'll bring forward.
Thank you, because,
With the downtown, did it have anything to do with an entertainment district?
No, we currently don't have an entertainment
I didn't
district.
think we did.
And that's definitely not a conversation that staff would like to enter into that conversation. I think that this had to do more with the historic district and the locations of some of the historic structures. And some of those are churches, so.
Yeah, I just would like to point out that the reason the downtown was exempted was nothing about, oh, the downtown's more special than other parts of town. It's all about density. So you have buildings that are very, very close together in the downtown. And so 200 feet makes a much bigger difference in downtown than it would be out on Highway 412, because within 200 feet of a business in downtown, you're going to touch many, many more types of entities than you would somewhere else on the edge of town. So because of that, we felt that it was only fair to have an exemption in the downtown for those types of, because of the development pattern down there.
412's getting pretty dense anymore. The whole town is getting pretty dense.
And again, we've looked at this, I measure things in football fields. So when you're looking at, 200 feet, we're looking at between 66 and 67 yards. In the downtown area, that could be half the city block. Again, even if you as a board decided, well, we want to take away the exemption of downtown, they could still be grandfathered, but sidebarring legal, they would fall under that same category as if that church stopped and there was a 6-month void in there, or that application would have to be redone. That's that grandfather that would go away. Am I saying that right correctly, Jay? I think you made it sound like a lot more elegant than I just did, but it's still, if it stops, again, it's they could see where that they would no longer be exempt.
So do other cities
Or not
have
the church, but the
these,
actual restaurant.
have these requirements with churches? Is this normal? Like where you can't serve alcohol at a restaurant if you're within 200 feet of a church? I get the school part.
If I may, I believe that a lot of this is the local response to whenever it became whenever the county became a wet county, and at the will of the board, that could be adjusted or changed. But other municipalities that I've worked at, it varies. I think the majority of them that I've worked at, and I've worked at about 6, that they're primarily in line with what the state statute is.
Right, we're a little more strict, is what I'm following, than other places that I've looked at. We're actually more strict.
I would assume so, given it's been a dry county forever until 10, 12 years ago, whenever it was.
They're great questions, and this is what this is. This is about discussion, trying to, find the best solutions. So we will do more as we go forward. We'll bring things back to you next pre-agenda, and we'll have more discussion and go from there. All right, excellent. The next topic, what we're going to talk, we have a presentation. This week, this pre-agenda presentation, whenever we talk about rate increases, I get frowns, and I know I'll probably get some. But Jason's going to come up and talk. One of the things that I have tasked him with since I became city administrator is we have a sanitation department that is not making revenue, which is kind of unheard of. Jason will show you numbers now where just from our rates being so low on the commercial side and just some things we're not doing, we're losing between 250 to 300,000 per year. If you look at a 10-year period, we're losing over $3 million. So Jason, if you want to come up and give discussions, please ask questions. But right now, we're just looking at commercial and possibly extra bags of garbage is kind of what we're looking at right now.
Okay, Jason Davis, Public Service Director. Yeah, Alan asked me to look at this, and I've been working on this really since the day I got here. So what I'm gonna do is kind of go over roll-off, commercial dumpster pricing, our scale pricing, and then the residential extra bag charges, okay?
Hey, Jason, before you go there too, you know, just where people know, these really haven't been changed since 2015, so this goes pretty far back. Our CPI was done somewhere in 2020, where we just had any increase at all, but we have not really gone and made our changes since 2015. And he'll tell you today, one of the big problems is, right now, we're looking at the landfill increasing $3 a ton, and we're looking at sludge, Steve, tell me if I'm wrong, $14 to $15 a ton. Estimated costs could be anywhere from $750 to $1 million just in these extra costs that come in. Now, that's an estimate, but that money's not budgeted, and we don't know where it's going to come from. Just like spring cleanup, you know, I've looked at some different things, and that's something that's near and dear, and people love that. But they need to understand that's not something people are charged for. That is an extra service that costs the city around $10,000 just to do that. So again, that money's got to come from somewhere. So,
yeah.
Sorry.
No, he's absolutely right. With the unfortunate reality is the landfill is going to continue to raise their prices, and I don't know how long they're going to do it. They're going to do it because we don't have a choice. At the end of the day, we got to take it somewhere, right? So right now, I'll kind of go over some of this stuff. Let's just start with the roll-offs. So right now, 20, 30, and 40-yard dumpsters, roll-off dumpsters, those are the big, long ones that do construction and things like that, okay? We charge $335.69. Doesn't matter if it's a 20-yard, 30-yard, or 40-yard. It's the same price. Makes no sense. No one does that. I don't know why that was. I'm not sure, but we're the only place that does the exact same price. So you can get double the yardage for the exact same price is what it's coming down to, okay? Then we charge $60 a month after that's been there for 30 days. Okay, so what's happening is there's a few individuals around town that are purchasing these 20, 30, 40-yard dumpsters. They're paying their deposit, and they'll leave them all year long and just pay $60 a month. So that's what they're paying basically for their trash to get rid of. So we're not making any money on that. My proposal for the 20-yard be $400, 30-yard $510, and 40-yard $600. And then a $10 a day after 30 days. Okay, we don't want them sitting there because what's happening is there's rust getting underneath the containers, they're rotting out. We're not making any money on that, you know, $3,000 container sitting out there. It's going to rust, and when we get it back after a year, and we've had some out there for a year. We've got a few of them out there. It's been out there for over a year. They're just sitting there, no money. And they're just getting charged $60 a month if it's a 20-yard. So by charging $10 a day after 30 days, that's going to get them motivated to get it picked up, right? Because then they're going to spend $300 if it's a 30 days in a month to get out of there. This is what City of Fayetteville charges in waste management, just so you know that we're still way under, okay? Even with my rates that I'm proposing, a 20 yards $450 through City of Fayetteville, waste management's $568.61. 30-yard, $525, Waste Management, $633. And then a 40-yard is $600, and Waste Management doesn't offer the 40-yard on their website when I went to it. Fayetteville does $10 a day after 30 days. Waste Management does $15 a day after 7 days.
Waste Management or private?
Waste Management is the biggest waste hauler in the country. Yep.
Mindy, whenever you talk, be sure and talk in the mic.
And Jason explained this too. Imagine, board, if every time a resident's garbage can got full and they didn't want to wait the Tuesday pickup, and we had to go out there and pick it up and dump it, and then they called us again on Thursday, we went up, picked up, and we're not charging them for that. And this is what's happening. Dumpster gets full, they're calling us, we dump it, they're not being charged. It's just an ever-ending cycle that it's costing money. It's costing us more money to get rid of trash than pick up trash. But Jason, I've had hours and hours of conversation on this. People are driving by landfill because we are so low to bring their garbage here. And then we got to take their garbage and take it all the way back. And what happens, and Jason gave me a great analogy today, if you go and you clean your living room out and you throw away 2 recliners, a love seat, and a couch, okay, that fills up a 6-yard dumpster and then some. But there's no weight. It's only like 600 pound, 500 pounds. There's not a lot of weight. It costs us, and it fills up the whole truck to take it. So now we're paying a driver and gas and everything to go get rid of this stuff, and it gets, we're losing money. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, he's absolutely
He's
right.
educated me really well.
Yeah, and that's, I'm gonna get into that as well. I'm gonna get down to the scale pricing, and I'm gonna hit on that right there. But I wanna go over the current commercial dumpster pricing, so this is all your businesses around town. Right now, we're charging $42.95 for a 2-yard, $85 for a 4-yard, and $126.59 for a 6-yard. The proposed rates that I have is $65 for a 2-yard, $115 for a 4, $160 for a 6, and $205 for an 8-yard, with an extra dump charge of $60. So like Alan's saying, if they call, right now, we just go pick it up. And there's not really a good incentive. So I want to charge, a trip fee of $60 to go pick up, regardless of the size, just to pick up that dumpster that's overflowing. Because the idea is to encourage them to go more than 1 day a week if they're just going 1 day a week. Right now, I just go pick it up because what's the encouragement there, right? So charge them a $60 dump fee if we need to go pick it up, or switch their days of service where they go twice a week or 3 times or whatever they need. The scale price, this is the big one for me right now. So what we pay Tawnytown to dispose of our trash is $33 a ton. That's what the city has to pay. We charge $41.82 for in town, $60 for out of town with a $5 minimum charge. I propose that we change for 55 in town, 65 out of town, and raise the minimum to $10. So if somebody comes in there with that couch or whatever, like Alan said, if they're hitting that minimum, they just paid $5 to get rid of that couch. And the volume that's taken up in the truck, now I gotta have somebody try to break the couch down, try to fit it into the truck, then try to fit the rest of the stuff on it. Fayetteville charges $64 a ton for in-town, $78 out of town with a $41 minimum. And Waste Management at the landfill charges $62.09 a ton. So we would still be cheaper for the in-town than anybody else is. But again, $33 is what we're charged to take a ton of trash to the landfill. So I have a scale house operator I gotta pay. We have somebody in the transfer station that's actually pushing the trash and packing the trailer down that we have to pay, and then a transport driver to take it to the landfill that we have to pay. So there's no room anywhere in there.
This, as I've been out there, I noticed this too, Jason and I were watching. A lot of people that live in the county, what they're doing, they're not paying for a trash service. What they're doing is they're holding their garbage in their garage or wherever. They put it in their back of the truck. It doesn't have a lot of weight. They drive it to our weigh station, and they're paying $5. It costs us more to get rid of that trash than $5, I promise you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because that's not even touching the wage of the person working there that's having, at the transfer station, the scale operator, the gas, and this happens a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I'm kind of going over some of the stuff with waste management here. You know, we had an increase to $36 from $33. Steve and I went and met with them, and that was the best they were going to do for us is 36, and we did better than most, to be honest with you. But that's still a $90,000, at least a $90,000 a year increase that we're going to spend. I think Christina figured it up. It was over 100,000, somewhere in there, 103,000. But that's how much of an increase we're going to eat if we don't raise something. Gets me into residential. Okay, I'm not talking about residential rates, raising them. I understand everybody and how they feel about that. Currently, they're not that far off as far as where their pricing should be, but we don't charge for extra bags. So what's happening is there's two cart sizes, 64 and 96, right? They don't want to go buy another cart, so they just take cardboard and line it up on the sides of the can and just put trash on top of it, and it's really 120 gallons of trash that we have to do something with. So our options are either don't pick it up, they call in, make them get another cart, and they're not going to do that. So what happens is, and this is the phone calls that I've been getting a lot from commercial businesses, I need you to come dump my trash because so-and-so, people are just going by, dumping trash and throwing it in their dumpsters. It's something that we've had to deal with. So I've instructed them just to pick them up because we're going to take that trash one way or the other. Either I'm going to have to send somebody back out there to dump a dumpster, or we're going to pick it up off the ground and take care of it. My solution, my proposal is charge them $2.60 a bag. Okay, that number that I came up with, if you were to take what we charge for a 96 gallon and divide out per gallon the money, it comes out to about $2.60 for a 13-gallon bag.
What do you charge for a 64 and a 96 a month?
96, I think, is 22 and change, and I'm not sure on the 64. I'm not sure. It's somewhere in there.
How does the $2.60 extra per bag keep people from continuing to use private dumpsters?
So what I've done is the new dumpsters that I've put in town, around town, I've now put locks on those dumpsters for especially the businesses that were getting really hit hard. So I ordered dumpsters with locks on them. That way the business can unlock them, put their trash in there, lock them back. They don't have to worry about people dumping on them anymore.
What's really neat with that, with the system he has set up, the truck driver doesn't have to get out to dump it. It's gravity. So when the truck picks it up, that lock actually opens up. So we're still not wasting time having to unlock it.
Exactly.
It's only the business owner.
Yep.
So that's a change that we have made.
Yep.
Because
I
I
do
could
know that
see
when-
that almost encouraging people to continue doing that if they're going to be charged
Sure.
otherwise.
Yeah, that's something that I've done here recently is provide locks, and for a lot of the businesses, especially the ones that we see get dumped on a lot. So we started with like Signature Plaza, went back there behind Eat My Catfish and all that. That's a big area that we see people just dumping down through there. So we hit them first and got them locks and getting them set up.
Director Smiley, do you have a question?
Well, I was just going to say, I'm glad to see that you're doing that because when we had a dumpster at our clinic, it was on the Oklahoma side, but our Siloam still dumped it. But when we were there after hours, we would see other people putting trash in our dumpster. And you can't prevent that. I mean, you can't be there all the time
Right.
unless you've got a camera. And
Exactly.
I guess I would rather see that dump there than just along the street somewhere. But there has to be some consequence.
Sure,
for
yeah,
that.
and that, the unfortunate thing is the city's the one eating the consequence right now, you know? we've done an audit on the businesses. We completed that a couple weeks ago. Found a lot of businesses that were not correct in the billing. We've corrected that now. Businesses are getting picked up like they should be picked up now. We've got a list and we're going off it. We're changing the dumpsters and how we pick them up. And we've had nothing but positive feedback since we started the new setup. So,
I appreciate the fact that a citizen can have extra trash and take it to our sanitation system and dispose of it and pay an extra fee.
sure.
I am glad that we have that opportunity, and I see people using that.
Currently, Director, the way it's set up, if someone did add extra trash and they took it to the scales, they could have anywhere from a bag to 6 or 7 bags, depending on that weight, and it would still be a minimum of $5 right now,
That's pretty reasonable.
right? So again, what the drivers are instructed to do now, if they do have a bag beside it, we're just leaving it, and then they got to put it back in their can, and if not, we're just losing a lot, we're just losing money, and
I
that's what we can't do.
understand that.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. I mean, but at the end of the day, with the landfill raising the rates the way they did, with us already being behind by not raising rates in the past, without going crazy and gouging, I'm trying to get us where we're making just a little bit of money. And this is the only way I could figure, make a little bit of money for the department.
I've noticed in my neighborhood that there are certain days that a neighbor's trash might be full, but then they've stuck 4 or 5 bags on top of that. How do you compensate for that?
So I've actually got, and if we move forward with this, pictures laid out where it shows what the charges will be for how high or how much you have over. That's what I did at my previous job. I set that up and put it on our website where everybody could see what we charge for it. So,
And that was my question. No matter where we come down on any of this, I think communication is going to be extremely
yes.
important.
absolutely.
I think Betsy had mentioned this at a meeting a few years back, or a few weeks back, not years, a few weeks back, that, there are still a lot of people in Siloam that remember the days of 2 pickups a week.
Yeah.
And so to go from 2 pickups to 1 pickup to now being charged extra for that garbage that used to be part of the 2, there's just going to be a lot of communication.
No, I totally agree, and it's not going to be easy, and I understand that, and to be honest with you, it'd make my life a whole lot easier if I didn't have to come up here and talk to you guys about this, to be 100% honest, but, this is where we are, and Alan's instructed me to figure out what was going on, and this is what's going on, so.
So,
We should, I'm sorry, Director, we should be projected to making a revenue anywhere from 350 to 500,000 a year, and we're even or we're in the negative. And that revenue also includes recycling. If we're losing 250 to 300,000 in the scales and commercial, because our residential is pretty much right there, we're actually still lower, and it allows some things. We're not looking at any creases right now. Now, our elderly pickup is very, very low. What is that, $11 or something?
Yeah, it's half the price.
It's half price.
$7 and $11, I think is what it is, so.
And pardon my interruption, Director.
oh, that's fine. And I like that the elderly is low and should stay that way. The week of Christmas.
We don't charge extra at the week of Christmas.
Okay.
And we
so
don't
that'll
charge
stay the
extra
same.
if there's any kind of natural disaster that puts us behind, snow, sleet, ice, whatever the case may be, and we're not running and we get behind, we don't charge extra. I've not charged extra if there was a power outage and people had to throw away, things like that. I mean, no, we've, in my past position, I never charged if there was something that is catastrophic that was done toward the people. This is just every day, went out and this weekend bought Timmy an extra whatever and have a lot of extra stuff. That's all. And because we want to encourage recycling, right? If you really get down to the brass tacks and the nuts and bolts, 40% of your trash that you throw away is cardboard. People don't realize it, but most of it is cardboard. So the idea is to encourage more recycling so they're not getting that charge. And the participation rate in Siloam is so low, it's ridiculous, right? So you have to incentivize. Most people are not going to recycle if they don't have to, if they can just throw it away, because it's easier to throw it away. And I hate to say that, but doing the research and seeing what I've done and where I've been, you have to incentivize recycling to get people to do it. Now, once they get used to it, it's usually a pretty good deal. But, I went from a 90% participation rate to Siloam that's probably 15%. So,
Jason, what is one of our cans, I can't remember what you told me, what's one of our average cans hold? Is it 6 bags of garbage?
so a 96 or 64, an average trash can or bag is 13 gallons. That's your average everyday household trash bag is 13 gallons. So 64, you'll be looking at 5 bags.
So again, a lot of times what I'm seeing come in to the transfer station is people aren't breaking down boxes, they're not recycling, and I'm guilty of it. You throw, my wife is bad about throwing a box, or I'll blame her, she's not listening, I hope. But you put a box in there without breaking it down, and all of a sudden you're putting that bag up, and it took up that much room in there. So again, breaking it down and putting it in recycling, which is free.
Yep.
Will help save room in that garbage can, because that's a lot of, garbage bag a day.
And I want to do a big, once, and I hope you guys take this to heart, and what I'm proposing is not for a punishment, but it's more of an encouragement. And if we can get something like this passed, where we can actually start doing more of an educational piece to the public. And, I even went door to door in my last job and knocked to people and said, I'll give you another recycle bin, it's free, don't worry about it. Right now, we're giving 2 bins away. Me personally, I don't care if they have 5. If they're using them and they're separating and it's helping our drivers and we're getting the commodities, it is what it is. So.
I have a few questions. The recycling bins, though, we're low on them, like people, no, we have plenty now? Okay. So can you send an email or do something so we know, like, you want cardboard in this recycling?
We can do that,
whatever.
sure.
Just.
Cardboard, if people would just flatten out the cardboard and put it under the recycle bin, that's the best way to do it.
Okay, because that's my next question. We actually, because we recycle everything and have for all of eternity since I was little. So we just take it, we don't leave it out for y'all to do because there's so much of it.
Sure.
So how do you want that handled? Like,
We'll take it. As long as it's not bigger than 3 by 5, the cardboard, and it's broke down and flattened, it's not a big deal.
so cardboard under the recycling bin, all the other stuff in the recycling bin, preferably more than 1 bin, and you'll send something so we can educate on what
Absolutely.
goes in the bins.
I like where you're going, Director. Gave me an idea, get Megan involved, and maybe we can do a 15, 20-second video, minute, just this is the proper way to recycle, and put it out in front boxes and do that. So that's something we can work on.
Post, and even just picture posts and.
No pressure.
And then maybe even in what the electric bill or whatever people get. So going back to the trash cans, technically, when I put my trash out, the lid should be all the way closed, correct?
Well, I usually give a good, 2 or 3 inch, in my last. And like I said, I've got some really good pictures. I showed Barbara yesterday and what I made from there that I was just going to steal and use here because it worked out really good and let the public know, what we did.
So
What we can also do, now this is up to you too, that we did this as well. We gave away 5 free bags a year, which means basically they could put out 5 bags a year and it wouldn't be a charge. We called them virtual stickers. We used to actually give them stickers to put on their bags, but I mean, that's something we can do too as well. So,
So if the lid is closed or close to it, then if they have an extra bag, they'll get charged $2.60. So just put the extra bag next to the recycling bin,
However-
or not recycling bin, trash.
however,
Thing.
it doesn't matter to me.
Or would you rather have it
It doesn't,
on
it's,
top with the lid open?
it depends on the operator. If I'm gonna get down to being honest, you know, a good operator can take it and do it, but, you know, if you get just a little jerk in it, it's gonna fall off. He's gonna have to get out and pick it up and throw it in, so it'd be better just to put it on next to the ground.
Okay.
They could save a lot of space too, things I've seen. You know, you have these big plastic containers or detergent. Well, you put that in a garbage can and it'll fill up half a garbage can. And that's, you know, that's flattening that out and put it in the recycling. Same thing with, you know, 2-liter bottles and different things like that. That'll save so much space. And again, that's free.
Yep.
If we can just recycle.
And I don't care, again, I don't care how many bins they get. I know right now we limited them to 2. I think that should be done away with because I want to encourage as much as we can because we're making money on that, right? So the more I can get in, the better it's going to be. They're not going to get charged their $2.60 for an extra bag or whatever. They don't have to worry about trying to throw it away. If we just need to do some education and show them what we got, that's free. That doesn't cost them a dime.
And that's crazy not to recycle. I was in Bella Vista last week and they don't have curbside recycling.
No, yeah, I know.
That,
Yep.
yeah. I had another question. It's gone.
Okay.
Do you have somebody available to give a talk to a civic group? Because I belong to some groups, and I used to have to do a program, and I had somebody from the sanitation talk about the recycling and how we could handle that.
Yeah.
So if somebody wanted to have a program, they could call you and schedule a speaker, and you could tell them how to do that.
Yeah, yeah. We used to have, we called them educators in Fayetteville, but that was their whole job. But, you know, it was such a big area. They were going to schools constantly. They were talking with kids and, you know, they would have tours and stuff around the facility with kids. And, you know, it was a good thing. I enjoyed that. But that's something we can look at too, maybe in the future, adding that, a position like that is just dedicated to, you know.
Because I believe, as the other directors, that communication and education
Absolutely
is the
agree.
key.
Absolutely agree. 100%. Yep.
It came back to me.
All right.
Also, when you send the email with the other information, would you include, like, what can you recycle? You know, there are numbers
absolutely.
on the plastics and, you know, the slick cardboard versus the other, because I'd like to do a post and start sharing and try to educate everybody on it. So if you could include that too, that would be
I
awesome.
really like the education piece because when I'm out at recycling and I'm trying to learn, I spend time out there, there are some things that we're recycling that aren't recyclable.
Right, yeah.
Just because they look plastic don't mean they're plastic.
You have to look at
So-
the number on the
So that'd be a
bottom.
great part of that education. This is recyclable, this is not.
Right.
Do some things like that.
Is
Just
that
to
on our
confirm.
website, what's recyclable and what's not?
There is some, yeah, it is, but I mean, it needs to be tweaked, to be honest
You don't
with
look at it when you're down at the,
Yeah, I mean, let's take cardboard, for example, like Betsy was talking about. Waxed cardboard, like your orange juice boxes and stuff like that, it's technically not recyclable because there's a wax coating that's on the inside of it. So the mill's gonna reject that, and we're gonna get penalized for it, you know, when we take it to process to sell. So, I know everybody thinks it is, and you would think it is because it says on the bottom recyclable, but if I had a way to strip the wax off of it, we could take it, but unfortunately, that's not something.
I know there's things that say they're recyclable and they're not because I put them in my recycle and they get taken out.
Yeah. And a lot of that has to do with the markets and where we're at in this area, right? If we were, you know, on the coastlines, there's a lot more recyclable areas that take these, like 3 through 7s, those plastics, they all say they're recyclable, but there's nobody that takes them. You know, I can't find anybody that would take them. So for us to start collecting them, we would be giving them away to somebody else to process. We wouldn't make any money. It'd just be a headache. So it's unfortunate, but that's just where we're at in the area. It's just where we're at.
Just to confirm, we're just beginning discussions here. We're not making any
Oh, ma'am.
final decisions.
I'm
Okay, so we
going-
don't need to be posting anything on Facebook yet about changes.
No, I'm going to take this to the Utility Commission on Thursday to hopefully get their approval to take this back to you on the next board meeting.
And then we'll continue to have more dialogue, more conversation we have our one-on-one meetings and different things like that. If you would, Jason, I know time's getting, I also want to talk about franchise fees. This is somewhere we're losing money and kind of just hit on that pretty quickly.
Yep. So it's a pretty common practice with most cities. Once you start getting a certain size, you have these other outside haulers that are coming in and setting dumpsters and roll-offs and things like that. They're damaging our infrastructure. They're taking some of the business away from us, if you will. A franchise fee on those haulers is something that I think would be good revenue for the city. It's not anything hard to do. It's usually a 10% fee. Whatever they make on that dumpster, we'll get 10% of. So,
Because you'll see a lot of dumpsters in town that are not ours, and they're, like he said, they're damaging our streets, our sidewalks. We're coming in and having to fix those things. So this is something that,
be an easy thing that we could recoup some money to, if they're using our town and the services that we already provide, just because they like Cards or Waste Management or whoever the hauler is, I think we should recoup some of that loss that we are not getting, especially when they turn around and bring it back to our site to dump because we're $20 a ton cheaper, so there is that as well.
you have another question, Director?
Yeah, apartments, like they use dumpsters. What about recycling for them?
So here's you can do cardboard, but we don't have a single stream facility that we can take mixed recyclables to. So if we were to set up some kind of recycling at apartments, we call them battleships. They're long roll-offs that got sections that are in them. Siloam doesn't have any currently that we can set out at these apartments. Most of the apartments don't want them because they're limited on space and they don't want to take up any more of their parking space as it is. So it gets tricky with apartments. It really does. It's a hard. The best way to go about apartments is when they are starting to get built is to throw that out there as an here's what we can do for you. But with the existing, what I've ran into, they don't want to give up any parking spots. They got just enough for their residents. So.
Any other last questions? And we're going to continue to bring information back. We just wanted to get this conversation going and let you know where we're at going forward. But I will keep you updated, and we will talk further next pre-agenda meeting about it. And if you have questions, feel free to call me during the week or shoot me an email, and we'll try to get those questions answered.
All right.
Thank you, Jason. Great job.
Thank you.
I don't know if I'll put Misty and Christine on the spot real quick. I just want to take an opportunity. One of the things, I'm sorry, I got away from my mic. Mayor's going to get me.
Yeah.
One of the things that I have noticed, and it's something we haven't done in years and years and years, is we have had a lot of property damage, and we have had a lot of car wrecks on uninsured motorists, and we have not gone after that money in years. So I've talked to legal, and legal is willing to send these letters, and because we're losing, I would guess, hundreds of thousands of dollars that someone runs into a light pole, they're DUI, and they run in and they damage garbage cans or run into people's houses and they don't have insurance. It's been our history that I know of, am I correct, Christina, that we have not gone after that money? Correct. So, again, we have police cars and fire trucks and city trucks that are run into by uninsured motorists. And our history is we have not gone after that money, and that's not acceptable to me. So again, I will try to absorb those fees in my budget this year, but that may be something if that gets to, I can't go back what happened, but starting yesterday, going forward, we will be holding people accountable for that. I just don't think the citizens and the taxpayers should have to eat that cost. So that's something that I may have to come back for a budget amendment later in the year if funding gets too costly. But we'll see where we're at. But our law firm, current law firm, is on board with us. So quick questions on that. I just kind of wanted to let you know there in case, it's just something we all thought we were probably doing, but I'm not sure we were doing. I know we weren't doing. Let me say it that way. Any other questions? And I got 2 minutes, so Megan, I want to have Megan just give you a quick update just on the eclipse and where we're at and what we're doing. A pretty big event. I found out people have been getting Airbnbs and hotels and doing this for like 2 years to come to this event. So Megan's staff's done a really good job on it.
All right, Megan Whitworth, Communications Manager. So we are super excited for the eclipse. We're about 40 days away, and we are having a weekend full of events. We're having a family movie night at the library. It's April 5th at 7 p.m. We're watching the classic Space Jam. It's the Michael Jordan one. We just thought it would be a fun way to celebrate space and just have fun with the friends and family. And then that Saturday, April 6th, we are having Kite Day. That's our annual celebration. Families come out to City Lake Park. They fly their kites. You can make kites. The library's partnering with Parks and Rec to do some fun solar eclipse events and education there. And then the big party is on Monday. It'll start at 11 o'clock at Memorial Park. It'll be on top of the promenade. Since we have a lot of construction on the road, we're going to encourage everyone to go on top of the promenade. We're going to have about 5 food trucks serving from like like burgers, Indian food, just tacos, just all of the fun stuff, and we'll have desserts. So we're super excited that, and the food trucks will be parked on the promenade, right there on the sidewalk. So that'll be super fun just to be able to celebrate there. And we'll have music and yard games, and we're just encouraging people to come out and enjoy this historic moment. And Siloam Springs is at 97% totality, which I think we're not right in the 100%, but I think 97 is pretty good. So y'all have your glasses, and starting on Friday, the public will be able to pick up glasses at the library. We're going to be passing them out at chamber events and the Main Street Girls Night Out. There will be glasses for people to pick up. So we're just super excited. And then also, just another little sneak peek, this Friday, the applications for the food trucks and commercial vendors will open up for 4th Friday. So be on the lookout for that. So we're super excited. Any questions?
Megan, I'll put you on the spot one more time.
I
A little
know.
over time. Kind of give them an update what we're planning for 4th of July. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah. Sorry, I get super nervous. So sorry if I talk too fast.
Take a deep breath.
I know. So 4th of July, we're gonna have a big block party near the rodeo grounds right there on Sue England Drive. It's gonna be closed down. Starting about 5 o'clock, we'll have food trucks open, yard games, just things for the kids. We're gonna have like balloon artists. And my goal is to there's these like huge bubble makers that like bubble, not magicians, but bubble artists to come for the kids to enjoy. And we'll have music. We have booked Clay Page. He's kind of my country artist crush, but he made the top 40 in American Idol in 2019. So we're super excited to welcome him to Siloam Springs. And we're just gonna get more music and just have an evening till the fireworks go off about 9:15. We're gonna have the parachuters back this year just to celebrate our great nation.
Trying to talk, I didn't realize Travis had a band, and I heard they're really good, so I'm working on him too over there.
Travis will probably sing at the Siloam Music Festival on June.
But that's something the board had came to me, and I just wanted to give you a quick update that we're talking with the fireworks company, and it's supposed to be bigger and better. We're putting more money into it, so we're gonna try to make it like a half-day event. What was the time, Megan, did you give it to them?
Starts about 5 o'clock.
Yeah, so we'll probably, 5 until it's over.
And is that actually on the 4th?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
It'll be a Thursday, so I won't be here that Friday. But we're super excited, so you guys make sure to mark your calendars and come out.
And thank you, Mayor. I have gotten just lots of compliments our last few board meetings, just the way we're working together and the way just the back and forth conversations of trying to make our city better. So just thank you for that. And staff, anything am I missing? No, they're ready to get out of here. Board, any last questions for me? Turn it over to you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. I don't think there's anything else. I would like to say thank you to our citizens and our staff for being here. I always appreciate seeing you all and getting updates from everyone. I know the board does. Thank you, board members, for being here with us, and Alan for having this meeting. I will say one thing that I do continue to hear from citizens whenever I'm out and about, is that they are not hearing us whenever they're reviewing our board meetings, whenever they're going back to watch them. They're still continuing to have problems hearing. They can see us, they just can't hear us. And I've had several people tell me that here just recently, so I'm just passing that along.
And if you hear that, board, please let me know, because I was having a conversation with Anthony before this meeting. We were having some glitches. We've had Will Tech come back. Anthony's staff's working. We think we've worked through that, so we should sound perfect today. So if you hear some feedback, let me know, because I'm hearing everything really well in here tonight.
Yeah, I agree.
We had some audio, and Chris was doing that, and then Chris took another job, so Anthony's trying to jump in there and figure out all that system. So I think we got it. But if you hear something, please let me know. You're not hurting my feelings, just we need to make sure people can hear us.
All right, and with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.